Annam Othea sitting in a tree. Kissing.
GameMasters here, and today we are exploring who the god of the giants, Annam All-Father, is, and how he tied into the giant mythos. Imagine the lands of Forgotten Realms in a time when not much was established, when mountains were small and oceans were shallow. The god Annam took an interest in Toril, and shortly after he married a demigoddess who manifested herself as a vast mountain. She goes by a few names. Sonhild, as called in ancient Thoras, the ancient dwarves referred to her as Diornian, and the giants refer to her as Othea. Since this is a topic of giants, we shall refer to her as Othea as well. Pardon the interruption, but I gotta let you know, a little later in this video, I'm going to interrupt it again to share some additional news about Annam. I think you'll dig it. While Annam had sired several immortals by the time he met Othea, it was from her that he sired his first terrestrial children, and he kind of became enthralled by them. Their firstborn, Lenaxus, would become the first Titan. Over time, Othea bore Annam more children, and Annam in turn granted each of his sons a great kingdom in their honor. This kingdom would eventually be called Osteria, which means father's seat in the language of giants. As Osteria grew, Annam divided into several sub-regions for each of his favored sons. They would look over the seas and lakes, the skies, rolling hills, the cold wastelands, fiery peaks, and the cold caverns of the Underdark. As time marched on, these leaders, these sons of Annam, would found the dynasties of what would become hill giants, stone giants, frost giants, cloud giants, fire giants, storm giants, wood giants, and titans. Even the two-headed son known as Arno and Julian would become the offspring referred to as Etten, which means runt in the giants' language. Sadly, Othea would not be faithful to her husband and found relations with Vaprik, a lesser god, and together their offspring would become ogres. It was about the time that these tribes of giants were finally getting a foothold in the lands that dragons began to appear, and eventually a 1,000-year war would ensue between giants and dragons. However, in the early times of the war, Othea found an interest in another minor god, a sea god named Ulitiu, which in turn produced 4 sons, which would become the giantkin, Furbogs, Vibogs, Vodkin, and Fomorian. Annam found out about Ulitiu and Othea's affair and slew him, casting his body in the cold sea, which would eventually turn into the Great Glacier and the Endless Ice Sea. Annam wanted to sire one final child with Othea. His plan was to have his final child restore the lands to greatness and wipe away what he saw as impure children that Othea bore from Vaprik and Ulitiu. However, she refused his advances. Keep in mind, this is all still while Othea is in the form of a grand mountain. Annam appears as a divine wind and blew himself across Othea's rocky slopes. Thus, she was with Annam's final child. She didn't want this child, but made a deal with Annam that he would have to leave Toril, and in return, she would allow the child to gestate until the day that it would call out its father's name. Annam agreed. During the time that this child gestated, humans, elves, dwarves, orcs, goblins, and the rest of Toril's humanoids and demi-human races came into existence. However, Annam's and Othea's firstborn son, the Titan Lenaxus, plotted to poison his mother, as he was devoted to his father and wanted to see the lands return to the glory of the giants. His attempt at poisoning her went awry, and poisoned not only her but all of his brothers as well, save for the Ettins and the wood giants. When Othea died from the poison, the mountain that served as her manifestation crumbled, and Annam's unborn son ceased to gestate and began to fight to enter the world. And when he did, he was known as Hart Killer, as the first meal he feasted upon was a deer's heart. Eventually, there would be a war called the War of the Heart that raged between the various giant types as they refused to see Hart Killer as their true heir of Annam. At the end of the war, Hart Killer is slain, and an odd purple mist appears to all giants in the vicinity and warns that by refusing to see Hart Killer as their king, that they would be rejecting the will of Annam, and eventually there would be a new king born of Hart's royal line, which would pave the way for Annam's return. To this day, giants will catch a glimpse of being called itself the Twilight Spirit, and will summon them to a sacred valley known as Twilight's Vale, in an attempt to bring the prophecy of Hart Killer's heir to fruition. Once per year, the great chiefs of the largest giant tribes make the journey to the Vale, where they will consult with the Twilight Spirit. But for now, there's not been an heir produced. As I said at the beginning, I've got some additional news about Annam, and while the video that you've just been watching is about Annam All-Father, it's just one interpretation about the giant's god. This version is largely based on Forgotten Realms, but there is an alternate take on Annam, and it came out back in 1992, a good 3 years prior to Giantcraft, and addresses giants in general and is not specific to the Forgotten Realms. Stick around, because next week I'll put that video out. In fact, subscribe so you don't miss it. Okay, back to the video. This is where the legend of Annam and Othea ends. I'd like to think that we will be presented with a much more detailed, rich history of this accounting in Bigby Presents Glory of the Giants. But should you wish to see the original source material that it's pulled from, Giantcraft, and Advanced Dungeons & Dragons book, I'll leave a link below in the description as to where you can get a copy. Does this paint a more detailed image in your mind about what giants are and where they came from? Does it evoke a sense of wanting to explore more about giants? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, and until next our paths cross, may you have secrets revealed unto you by the Twilight Spirit.